So here's where it gets really yummy. The ABCs of curriculum design, the affective, the behavioral, and the cognitive domains. This is a part of creating curriculum that is most often completely ignored. People are so busy focusing on the content that they forget that we don't teach content, we teach people. The content is what we are sharing with them. Our focus needs to be on the human beings. And the human beings are made up of the affective, the behavioral, and the cognitive domains. So affective is our emotions, our feelings, our values, things we like, things we don't like, our desires, personal judgment calls. Of the 6 facets of understanding, interpretation, perspective, empathy, and self-knowledge tend to be the most comfortable fit here. Please, again, in your PowerPoint, go through these particular URLs. It's worth the time. Behavioral, our actions, our physical, our doing. Sometimes called psychomotor, you'll see that written out somewhere. It tends to be the most overused and misunderstood. Just because someone is doing what you tell them to do doesn't mean they're understanding it or why they're doing it. I could sit down and do a sheet of threes, right? 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5. I may even be able to get most of them right without truly understanding what I'm doing. I'm just trying to memorize and remember what I've seen done or what I know is supposed to go in that blank. Of the 6 facets, application tends to fit easiest under this domain. If we think of it that way, maybe we should even think of it as authentic application. It's not just repeating, it's actually doing. Think of our multiplication again. It's not just doing the worksheets, it's sitting down with a bunch of marbles or whatever and putting them into groups of 3. And then recognizing how I move those groups of 3 around changes the number of objects that I have. The getting involved, the actual experiencing. Focus should be on the physical experiences and the tangibles. Constructionism. Recognize constructionism is different than constructivism. Constructivism, V for Vygotsky, is where language is considered our greatest learning tool, and the individual needs to be involved cognitively in creating their own understanding through the sharing of information, the creating of schema through involvement in building understanding on a verbal level. Constructionism is about actual building, behavioral, tangible. Seymour Papert is the guru of constructionism. Gary Steger is a name you'll come up a lot with constructionism. I am a huge proponent of constructionism, but seeing as I'm also more of a realist than my friend Gary Steger, I tend to be more of a constructivist than a constructionist. But hey, to each his own. The behavioral action needs to be a verb. It must be active, not passive. Again, please go visit this URL. It'll make a lot more sense. Moving on. Cognitive. Thoughts, understanding, conceptual knowledge. Yes, the closest thing to what we traditionally call learning in the head. Everything from the 6 facets actually could be connected to a cognitive change. Think Dewey. The plasticity of our minds, in that when we truly get something, it changes the way we think about everything. On some level, you could say our mind is a giant Rubik's Cube, and every time we add something new to it that truly has some depth and guts, it changes everything related to it. I was going to use a computer programming metaphor here, but that's so geeky, even I won't go there. Think Dewey. The mind is plastic. If there's nothing to hook onto or embed into, we're not accessing the cognitive domain. We're stuck in short-term memory land. That's when you cram for a test, you pass the test, and then 24 hours later you have no idea what you said. Go back to the PowerPoint and please go through this URL. I think it will help you gain even a stronger understanding of this whole concept of cognitive. Thinking is not as simple as we think it is. So looking at A, B, and C, affective, behavioral, and cognitive in the real world, This may seem like a big no-brainer. When we design curriculum, we need to design for all three domains to ensure meaningfulness and transferability, right? Well, recognize how often this doesn't happen. Most of the time, when curriculum is either handed to us or we're racing to get it done, we are so focused on ensuring that we are covering the content that focusing on the learner, the whole learner, the emotional, the judgmental, the value-laden affective part of that learner, the behavioral, what they can actually psychomotorly, physically do in relation to this learning, and the cognitive, the engaged manipulation and growth of schema. We don't usually go there. And you know what? It's not our fault. We have so much going on. There's a million people telling us to do a million things in the span of no time whatsoever. So don't anybody look at the learning we're getting here and beat themselves up or feel guilty or this is not what this is about. This is about recognizing how we can go to the next level. And these are the tools to be better. So let's start with this. What is your preferred learning style? Okay, go ahead and take the quiz. The link is right there in the PowerPoint. And then think, would your students answer the same way? Chances are no. Yet, when we design, what do? We go with what we know works. Usually what works is what works for us or what we have experienced. Scaffolding onto past experiences. Do we acknowledge prior learning, prior knowledge? Do we acknowledge informal learning and non-formal learning, stuff that we just pick up through life? We can use that, and that tends to really strengthen both the affective and the behavioral, which then informs the cognitive. Dewey, the outside world is part of school. It is part of life. School is not an escape from the real world. School is a part of the real world. And the values of the individual, his or her family, his or her community. If you are working in an environment where education is not valued, you need to work with your students to create an environment within that classroom where it is obvious and open and shared that education, real, meaningful, empowering education is important. You can't fight culture, but you can create one within your sphere of influence. Examples of ABC in the real world. Please, again, take your time with these, all on the PowerPoint. And here we go. Before returning to eCollege and our chat thread on this topic, see if you can seek out some examples of curriculum in the real world where you see the affective, the behavioral, and the cognitive. Post the link to the lesson, the unit, or the set of lessons. Now again, I find it rare when a single lesson covers all three. There are some wonderful ones out there, but it's rare. So if you're not finding one that covers all three, one lesson, don't beat yourself up. Broaden your scope. Look for a unit that covers all three within the realm of that learning. All right? I hope this has clarified. I'm sorry that the audio and the PowerPoint doesn't work, or doesn't work for some of us, but this should make this experience more interesting and hopefully more affective, more cognitive, and will empower you to go out and behaviorally get more involved in your own learning. All right, have a good one, my friends. See you online.